I'm Corey Costello, and this is Tehachapod's Eye on the Capitol. Eye on the Capitol is an informative look at state and national legislation that impacts your life in Tehachapi. From new proposals, new laws, and even future ballot measures, we do the research and pass on that information to you while you go about your life. On today's episode, the election is underway and confusing for some when it comes to replacing Kevin McCarthy following his resignation from Congress. Plus, the latest legislative session is also underway with over 2,000 bills being introduced in Sacramento, and the state budget continues to be debated following the governor's initial presentation earlier this month. But we start at the state capitol, where Governor Gavin Newsom has decided that March 19th is the special election date for candidates vying to fill the seat vacated by former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy following his resignation in December. At the request of election officials in Fresno County, the election is not part of the March 5th statewide presidential primary election, as election officials felt this would cause some confusion. As a result, the special election to finish the remainder of McCarthy's one-year term will be held on March 19th. Here's how this will work. First, you'll be voting for the 20th Congressional seat in the March 5th election. That was the first primary ballot you received linked to the presidential primary. But that is the primary for the full term, which starts in January of 2025. The top two vote getters in the March 5th election will move on to the general election for the full term, which starts in January of 2025. But that's a separate issue. Voters in the areas represented by the 20th Congressional District have also received ballots via mail, a second envelope of a different shape and color for the March 19th special election, listing the candidates that have been certified for the congressional seat to fulfill McCarthy's current term. Should one candidate win the majority of the vote in the March 19th special election, that candidate will be declared the winner and could be sworn into Congress as early as May. Should no candidate receive the majority of the vote, the top two candidates will advance to a special election runoff in May for the right to fulfill the remainder of McCarthy's term, which expires in January of 2025. Also sprinkled in that time frame is the 2024 general election, where the winner of the special election will face a new slate of challengers for the full two-year term of the seat, which starts in January of 2025 as well. So cleaner and both confusing at the same time, but there are two ballots and two votes for the 20th Congressional District. Previously on Eye on the Capitol, we covered new laws taking effect in January of 2024. One of them, as anticipated, has been ordered to a halt after a pair of legal challenges that may advance to the California Supreme Court. SB 2, which was passed by the California Legislature, aimed at limiting many places that concealed carry permit holders could carry a firearm. It was a direct response to the U.S. Supreme Court's decision last year, striking down a New York law that required concealed permit applicants to have a compelling reason for needing to carry a firearm. The justice's decision marked that law in violation of the Second Amendment. A similar legal challenge was filed against SB 2 just days into the new year. The first legal victory came to opponents of SB 2 in late December when an injunction against enforcing the new law was issued as part of the legal challenge. That injunction was temporarily lifted by a district court. However, that court was overruled by the United States 9th District Court of Appeals, who has stayed the injunction. As it stands now, SB 2 cannot be enforced until legal challenges play out. Gun rights advocates are calling this a victory for the Second Amendment, while Governor Newsom, who championed the proposal, is labeling the 9th District judges as extremists for blocking SB 2's implementation. Speaking of the governor, he unveiled his first budget proposal to the upper house of the legislature in January with the stark challenge of addressing California's $68 billion deficit. Prior to the proposal, the governor had issued some spending cuts warning to various state agencies, warning them of the challenge in the budget. In January's first proposal, the governor claims the $68 billion estimate released by the Legislative Analyst's Office was slightly high, and after revenues had been received and projected to come within the next few months. He believes that number will be more around $38 billion. The governor's plan: withdraw from reserves, rainy day funds, safety nets, and borrow about $6 billion. Along with that, there'll be unfilled state positions, cuts on non-essential travel and technology, and several other belt-tightening moves.
All of this uncertainty happened because we experienced something we've never experienced in modern history in this state. We didn't collect taxes in April of last year. Why is there a May revise? There's a May revise purposely because it allows you to revise your estimates on the basis of what you've actually received in terms of revenue and tax collection, because we all know tax day, or we used to in California, used to be in April. The IRS extended it twice. It was extended to October 16th, and then they extended it again to November 16th. So the legislative analyst went in estimating about $47 billion of revenue in their May revise that didn't appear. We projected about $43 billion in revenue, 42.9 that didn't appear. We weren't that far off on our guesstimates, but we had a blindfold on. Both of us, all of us. And so last year we balanced a budget that would have been a little higher, significantly higher, the deficit, and we would have attended to most of those issues in that May revise and that balanced budget, but we didn't know because we weren't privy to that information that every other state and historically all prior budgets had benefited from. Rainy day withdrawal, we're going to pull $13.1 billion from the two reserve accounts. Now, I don't want to confuse you, and we had it out with finance, my team. Should I include the 5.7? You're going to say, wait, you mean revenue borrowing? No, this is why we didn't include it. It's exactly 5.7 that we're pulling under the Prop 98 reserve, but I'm going to get to that separate. But that's not part of the balancing, remember, of the general fund. That's separate. But I'm going to get to that. And I just want to seed you with that so you'll understand the next slide. So we're pulling $18.8 billion, 13.1, and then the revenue and borrowing, special fund 1.4, 3.8 on the MCO. We'll talk about the rest, but that gives you roughly what we're doing here. But here's the good news. It still allows us to maintain $18.4 billion in reserves. This, by the way, also includes the school rainy day fund, of which we're pulling 5.7 this year, but it appears here for the purposes of understanding the reserves, the overall reserves that we have. By the way, you'll see a new reserve because we added to our own shortfall in terms of our need to balance an additional $3.4 billion in this SFEU account, which is basically a checking account. It's like line of credit of sorts, but with the money in the bank. So we're going to add an additional $3.4 billion for emergencies and uncertainties. So that actually added to our burden.
However, last week, the Legislative Analyst's Office increased their deficit projection to $73 billion, claiming a lack of collection on revenues owed to the state. This proposal now sets the timeline for approving the budget, which is likely a 6-month process filled with committee hearings and negotiations. The hearings start later this month, with the governor set to release a May revision by May 14th. Based on updated revenue projections, June 15th is the legislature's deadline to pass the budget to avoid not being paid, and July 1st is the deadline for the governor and legislature to approve the final spending plan. Back to Sacramento, where the legislature will now start working on 2,124 bills filed before the deadline earlier this year. That number is average for the state and down from a record 2,600 bills introduced last year. There are too many to cover on this edition of Eye on the Capitol, and we will cover some as they are introduced formally in committees and forwarded or not for votes by the Assembly and State Senate. A couple to note, Prop 47, the 2014 ballot initiative passed by California voters that reduced many property, drug, and retail theft crimes to misdemeanors, has had contentious results in the state. While removing the felony provisions, the bill has drastically reduced prison sentences and incarceration rates, but has left a damaging toll on retailers in the state and residents who are now pushing back on the measure. Stopping short of calling for a new voter referendum on Prop 47, Governor Newsom, a champion of the 2014 initiative, is now asking lawmakers to consider new proposals to toughen up certain penalties for these crimes. Newsom is asking to create new categories of crimes targeting professional offenders who have stolen property or burglarized vehicles with the intent to resell them, and enhance the penalties for people who resell large amounts of stolen goods. He also wants to clarify existing powers to arrest retail thieves and aggregate separate offenses, making permanent a law allowing charges for organized retail crime. Property crime has become an early focus for legislative Democrats this year, with Speaker Robert Rivas launching a dedicated retail theft committee and multiple lawmakers floating proposals to amend Prop 47, an outcome a key Rivas ally has left on the table. Other lawmakers say a deal with the governor could be reached, but the Assembly is moving forward with AB 2943, authored by Rivas and other representatives of areas who previously backed Prop 47 but have realized the negative impact of organized retail theft in their latest filings. AB 2943 would make it a crime for any person to possess property unlawfully that was acquired through one or more acts of shoplifting, theft, or burglary from a retail business. If the property is not possessed for personal use and the person has intent to sell, exchange, or return the merchandise for value, or the intent to act in concert with one or more persons to sell, exchange, or return the merchandise for value, and the value of the possessed property exceeds $950. The bill would, for the purpose of determining the value of the property, aggregate the property with any other property possessed by the person with that intent within the prior 3 years, and with any property possessed by another person acting in concert with the first person to sell, exchange, or return the merchandise, if that property was also acquired unlawfully. The bill would make this crime punishable as a misdemeanor or a felony by creating a new crime. This bill would impose a state-mandated local program. Focusing on professional retail thieves, the measure would create a new crime with a penalty as long as 3 years behind bars for the possession of stolen property with the intent to sell. Because intent to sell can be difficult to prove in court, evidence can include repeat offenses or possessing an amount of goods that is inconsistent with personal use. Other key provisions of the bill are aggregation. The value of thefts from different retailers can be added up so they can be prosecuted as grand theft. Resellers, including online sellers, would be required to maintain records to show that goods were obtained legally, and large retailers would be required to report theft data. Enforcement means police could arrest shoplifters based on a witness's sworn statement or video footage of a crime, and intervention, courts could refer some shoplifters to alternative programs instead of jail or prison. AB 50 has been introduced, which will address the expectations of timely installation of electric utilities for new customers and load increases for existing customers. This will be the subject to the oversight of the California Public Utilities Commission following complaints that power companies are taking as long as 2 years for new installations for a variety of projects. A few bills are slated to combat the rise of fentanyl-related crimes in the state of California. AB 701 would add fentanyl to the list of enumerated controlled substances that are eligible for sentence enhancements when a defendant is found with a large quantity in their possession. When do sports and politics mix? Frankly, all the time, as sports will be the topic of discussion several times in a new legislative session. First, a bill to ban youth tackle football for any child under 12 in the state was successfully killed in its third reading to the Assembly Committee on Sports and Tourism, following a statement by Governor Newsom, who promised to veto the bill if passed. AB 734, proposed once again by Assemblyman McCarty, has officially died following that statement and vote. Steve Famiota of the State of California Youth Football Coalition had this to say following hearings and protests in the Capitol earlier this year.
Now that the banned youth football circus has left town, we can all stop, take a deep breath, and go, whew, thank you, Lord. We did it. We did the job. All of us did the job. Everybody in California youth football and everybody that supported us did the job and stopped that bill. And we should be proud of that. No doubt. Definitely should be 100% proud of the work that we all did. And not to ruin the party, but I'm about to ruin the party. I wish I could tell you that this ban youth football debate and fight is over, but it's not. It continues. And it continues because there are people in this country that have set their, life goal as ending youth tackle football for some reason. Guys like Chris Nowinski of Concussion Legacy Foundation. He's not going anywhere. Dude is making bank to end youth tackle football. Yes, I know. We're volunteers. That dude's making bank here to end the sport. And guys like him are not going to quit. So that means guys like me and people like you are going to have to be diligent and aware that this fight is not over. And we have to think differently in youth football in California. And that means we have to come together like we did in this fight and be a strong group, a strong coalition and alliance together. Do what you got to do with youth football in your cities and all that other stuff. Play for whoever you want, right? But in the bigger scope, we have to come together as leaders to be prepared for the next fight, which will be coming. When? I don't know, but it will be coming. And I just wanted to pass that message along to you guys. Always reach out to me. Let's keep working together. Let's keep doing great things for California youth football and the kids that play it, keeping it a viable and safe sport for future generations.
The bill was opposed by USA Football and thousands of youth football organization members and parents across the state, including the Valley Youth Football Association, in which Tehachapi Youth Football is a participating member. As spring training arrives, Los Angeles Dodger fans were certainly happy when free agent Shohei Ohtani took his talents from Orange County to Los Angeles, signing a rich $700 million deal in December. The 10-year contract pays the superstar just $2 million a year for 10 years and putting an estimated $680 million in deferred compensation for payment later. Good for the business of baseball, but not good for the state of California, according to State Controller Malia Cohen, since the $680 million will most likely be paid to Ohtani after his career and California residency is over. Cohen recently told Cap Radio that she is waving the flag over this issue and is asking for changes in the tax code. She estimates that the state of California could miss out on $98 million from Ohtani should he receive that compensation at home in his native Japan. She pointed to the current state budget crisis as one reason and her concerns that this could lead to similar deals in sports, which could be a large problem for state government. The Dodgers also recently signed former Mariners slugger Oscar Hernandez to a one-year $23.5 million deal that includes $8.5 million of deferred payments to be paid between 2030 and 2039. Current federal tax laws, which supersede California, allow for massive amounts of deferred payments, meaning the United States Congress, not the state of California, would be responsible to modify tax codes to close a loophole and limit the amounts that can be deferred. That's the latest from Eye on the Capitol. If you have a question or would like more information about one of the topics covered or have an idea for a future episode, email us at media@TehachapiCityHall.com. Until next time, you keep living up Tehachapi, and we'll keep an eye on the Capitol.